Well, that's what's happening down in Euston Street, and Sean Oak Potts, whom we just saw there in the film, has joined us, and later on he'll be sharing his discoveries with us. I'm also joined by Dr. Seóirse Bodley of the Music Department in UCD and Adrian Munnelly, Director of the Arts Council. You're both very welcome. Seóirse Bodley, as a composer who has drawn on traditional themes, how would you assess the need for a National Archive of Traditional Music?
I think it's extremely important because I well remember when I first started to become interested in Irish music proper when I was about, say, 18 or so. And at that time you couldn't get a record. It was hard to find out even where you would hear it. And we're really in a totally different situation now. It's very important that there is access to this material, ready access. I think is very, very important indeed, because you never really know what way in the field of composition, say, the game is going to go. It's not that very long since in composition one was talking of modernism as really being the only way for many people, but continually one finds that Irish music is not dead in this particular instance. It keeps coming back again under other guises.
Do you think there's a certain smugness or complacency in Ireland about traditional music? You know, we say it's a great thing, but when it comes to archives and so on, we've been rather complacent, haven't we?
I do, yes. I think, well, that certainly has been so in the past. It has been assumed that Irish music was, quote unquote, a good thing, but if you wanted to get actual access to it, it wasn't always easy. And I think for those reasons, obviously the archive is of the highest importance.
Would I be right in saying, Seóirse, that apart from yourself and Sean O'Rea, that very few modern Irish composers have used traditional Irish music in their compositions? Well, it seems to have a rather low profile, let's say.
Yeah, that may be true to a point. And indeed, if you look at Sean O'Rea's original compositions, there's really very little Irish music in those at all. I'm not talking about the work for Cathal Goan now, but in the original compositions. So, and even in my own case, it has varied at different times. But I think that perhaps isn't the way one should look at it, because other composers have, to a greater or lesser extent at different times, drawn on the Irish tradition. My honest feeling is that if it was available, if the material is available rather more readily, as it will be with this archive, then it may well encourage people to make use of that type of material.
Adrian, some people might say it's strange for the Arts Council to become involved in funding a project like this. I mean, after all, it's not really an artistic area, is it?
Oh, most certainly it is. I don't find it strange at all. The traditional music is part of our contemporary culture. The Arts Council is established to deal with the contemporary in our culture. There's no reason why it should not be involved with traditional music and establish an archive. There are lots of other national agencies in the arts, the National Library, National Gallery, National Theatre. You have national orchestras in RT, for example. So there really isn't any reason why there should not be an institution such as the archive, a national body, to provide information to people like Seóirse and like Sean O on what is a vital part of our culture.
Well, the council have been funding this now for 2 years on would I be right in saying an experimental basis? Will your commitment continue?
Well, we are committed to the idea of the archive. Our commitment, however, has to be measured against our resources. And if the resources we have don't expand, then it's very difficult to provide additional resources for an institution like this. However, there's a new element on the scene in Ireland now. We've got a Heritage Council, which was recently established by the government, and I know the Taoiseach is particularly interested in this. And that Heritage Council, I believe, will have resources of its own to apply to what is part of the heritage of the Irish nation, which is traditional music. It's also that unique art form that is both heritage and contemporary. So the Arts Council and the Heritage Council can both get involved in it.
What kind of money are we talking about here now? What sort of an investment will the Arts Council make in the archive?
Well, I remember Lord on Brendan Brannock when he was a member of the Arts Council. The figure he had was 6 figure. It was 100,000 he wanted instantly, immediately, yesterday sort of thing. Currently we're giving less than 50,000. But I've no doubt that an institution, any sort of national institution that's going to conduct its affairs properly in the life of the nation would have to need substantial sums.
If this project is of national importance, Adrian, do you think the government should become directly involved in it?
Well, the government is directly involved in it through the Arts Council. The Arts Council being that member of the state body that provides funds for the arts. And I like to think that being
what I
directly
mean
involved...
is that it should be an area of special and extra funding.
Yes, I would like to think that we could make the case that would attract funds from government for additional funds for an archive.
Have you any thoughts on that, Seóirse?
Oh, well, I mean...
Government commitment.
Government commitment, I think, is certainly very important, because obviously one of the questions for the Arts Council is the number of different bodies they have to service in one way or the other. And one can obviously see that a government commitment to fund in a very definite way what is, after all, as Adrian has rightly said, a national institution, would be of the utmost importance in just ensuring its continuance. Because the last thing I would want to see is that the archive starts off and then, God forbid, would disappear again, just when it's got started.
Well, we've called this programme Tomb or Treasure House. Isn't there always a danger of a project like this turning into a dust-gathering exercise? You know, that's if the public and if the musicians don't actually go out and use it in a practical way.
Well, that may be so, but I mean, one would hardly call, for instance, the National Museum a dust-gathering exercise. So that, I mean, obviously, as Adrian said, the national heritage is important, and this is an important aspect of it.
If it is a tomb, then it's a Tutankhamun's tomb. It's full of richness.
Yeah, absolutely.
That can be exploited by as part of a living culture.
But I notice like a lot of traditional musicians don't seem to be all that interested in the names of tunes. You know, they take great pride in getting the tune right musically. But ask them like, what's that called? They say, oh, well, I don't know, I got it from X or from Y. Well, how sure are you that musicians will actually be going in here to this archive and making use of it?
Well, I just wonder, in a sense one could also argue the point of view that perhaps musicians should be going into an archive, in the sense that it's one of the things that has happened is this levelling out of local styles by musicians becoming so well versed in all sorts of other styles. But obviously, in practice, of course, I'm sort of just being devil's advocate here, and one knows that many musicians do, for instance, use tape recordings and are interested in old for instance, the pipers are an obvious case in point. They're very interested in the older recordings and how pipers in former times handled the instrument, even just on technical matters. So things like that, of course you're going to have people going in. That's played for.
Seóirse and Adrian, thank you both very much.
You're welcome.